Well, we've finally got Bob and Helen Frisbee from Larry Harker's Auto Repair. So I think this rounds out all of the great bumper-to-bumper shops. And we need to get you guys in a little bit more often. It's been a while, but again, it's Bob and Helen Frisbee. They own Larry Harker's Auto Repair at 38th Avenue in Indian School. And this is what I call a true mom-and-pop shop. And if you go to their website or even our bumper-to-bumper page and read about that shop, you just don't find shops like this. Bob, you've been there since
67,
day one.
I think. Yeah, yeah, day one.
and you started there as a service advisor, or a lube tech, I think you said. And then kind of you've worked your way all the way through to the top.
Yeah, worked my way up the ladder.
And that started when again?
Oh, we started in 67. Actually, I started out with Larry Harker at Minkum Rambler in Glendale. And then he opened up his own shop. And then I came over with him and been there, worked my way up the ladder from lube oil and filler man to service writer to manager, eventually owner.
The whole. I mean, that's just cool. It's
very cool. You don't see that very often anymore.
And you see it sometimes where a guy started off, I mean, it's me, or it's you. You were a lube guy somewhere, and then you were a tech somewhere, and then you went off. You've had one job, or maybe two, right? At the dealership, and then...
Yeah, dealership in here, yeah.
What's a Rambler?
I think that was the name, right? Minkum Rambler.
Minkum Rambler, but it was a Rambler was the car that we sold.
Old Ev Minkum, the
governor.
Well,
I was asking Ellen before the show who handles the happy customers and who handles the grumpy customers, and she said, I handle all the ones.
Absolutely. I get the happy customers. He gets, if they're really upset, they go directly to his office. They know exactly where it's at, too.
Well, then I take that you don't deal with very many people then, Bob. If you're dealing with the angry customers, it just doesn't happen, right?
Nope. Ellen gets all the accolades all day long.
Now, Ellen, when did you become involved? Was this?
Actually, I started in 82 helping. They had a parts runner that had some problems, and I was just in between jobs, and they said, Larry Harker at the time still owned it, and said, hey, why don't you come on board and run parts for a few days? And so I said, sure. And after a few days, he said, I like your work. Would you mind staying? And Bob goes, I don't want my wife working here.
Okay, so you were married at the time then.
We were married. So. We've been married for 42 years. So he said, no, I don't think that's a good idea. And I go, I kind of like it. I'm with people. I'm going out and getting parts. So that's how it started. Yeah. And before I knew it, I was working full time.
How about that? Never left, or they won't let you go now, right?
No, in 1989, then we purchased it from Larry Harker. He retired, so we took over from that point on.
That's a great story. I mean, that's one of the...
So technically, we all worked our way up.
Yeah, exactly.
And we're both still together.
I don't know.
42 years in business together is a big deal.
Yeah.
I don't know if my wife and I don't know if we could do that.
I don't think my wife and I could do it either.
She couldn't stand me that long.
Well, 42 years. That's we get a lot of things ironed out in 42 years. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Well, one of the things that's cool about their shop is they do a traditional oil change. It's not like a real quickie pull in, drain the oil, put a filter on it, and send you on the way. A traditional oil change, and that's something that you can get it done quick job, or you can really have your car checked out, make sure it's in good shape. Sometimes people don't want to go in for that oil change because it's like me getting on the scale. I don't really want to know. But then Ellen was saying before the show, I do want to know what kind of condition my car in. As a woman, does it need brakes? Does it need tires? Does it need belts?
Absolutely, because we don't want to be on the side of the road wanting to know what failed, and we just had our car in the shop. They didn't tell us. Yeah,
it's one of those things when I started too. I lived in Virginia. That's not why I have the name of my shop order, but I lived in Virginia, and they have state safety inspections. So they're always doing the inspections on the car annually. And the beauty but when I started here and I'm in Arizona, I would check the car, but then I really wouldn't check the car. They come in for the oil change, and then kind of darned if you do, darned if you don't. The one guy, you look at the car and, oh gosh, you need brakes real bad. I just came in for an oil change. What are you doing looking at my brakes? And then the next person, you don't check them, and then they're complaining. 2 weeks ago I was in, now I need brakes and I need rotors because you didn't tell me, and well, we didn't check it. So, what should you expect when you get an oil change? That's part of it. Not only for the price, you have to wonder, if there's an $8.88 oil change, $8.88, that's, the math doesn't work. You can't do those. So what should it cost and what should you get?
Well, to do a proper oil change with a good inspection and a road test before and road test after, your technician's going to have anywhere between 45 minutes to an hour in it, and technicians may be $20 an hour, $30 an hour. And then the cost of 5 quarts of oil and a filter is just cost. If you went down to Checker Auto Parts, maybe $25.
$22.49, Dave.
$22.49. So
did a little bit of shopping today. So if you want to do this an oil service yourself, and I don't like to call them an oil change because it's really a service, not just a change, in my opinion. You're going to spend $22.50 just to buy the oil in the filter. Didn't buy a new crush washer, didn't top off any fluids, didn't fill the windshield washer yet. You haven't even used a wrench. Hopefully you have a wrench and a drain bucket and then someplace else to put it. Put the wasted oil. So, you have to start to wonder if you're buying an oil change for much less than $25.
How does that work out?
Yeah, the math doesn't always apply. So.
Well, anymore you get these cars with these exotic oils, so you got to use a synthetic in some of these vehicles, and it's specific to a vehicle. So like in an Audi or a Volkswagen, they have different standards and grades of oils, and these tolerances on these engines are so much tighter than they used to be, and we've got variable valve timing and all the things that go along with it that you can't skimp on oil changes anymore.
Well, the way I see it is, if you're on let's just take a normal car. A normal car is something I would say doesn't take synthetic oil. It's not some specialty filter. We call it a Toyota Camry, whatever year. It's a normal car. If you do an oil service every 3,000 miles, you're going 15,000 miles a year. That's going to be 5 oil changes. If you go 5,000 miles, that's 3. You're talking, let's just say it's a $40 oil change. It's $80. Like I said before the show, go to Starbucks 10 less times throughout the year and get the 2 oil changes instead if it's a financial consideration. You don't get for $30 or $40 the quality of individual inspecting the car. It's not always just the oil change. It's what you get with it that really gets the value in the oil change, I think.
Yeah, and it's a good way. I say use oil changes to build a relationship with the shop. You buy a new car, you don't have to go back to the dealer. Some people prefer where they're under factory warranty, but you really don't. If you're going to a good quality shop, use that to make a relationship with the shop. They're going to get to know your car.
And I'm thinking that people today are more wiser about their oil changes. We are seeing more and more, a higher volume. Don't you agree, Bob, on oil? More people are coming in for oil changes. So I think the public, they're more aware that they need. That's one of the most important things you do for your car.
Change the oil and prevent that catastrophic breakdown. I mentioned we've got the top 10 most stolen vehicles in Arizona. What do you think's number 1, Matt?
I read the article. I already forgot, but it's got to be some kind of Honda, I would imagine, or a Toyota.
Well, it's a 94 Honda Accord. And I was looking at the list, and it looks like 5 of the top 10 are going to be Asian imports. So we've got Nissan Sentra, Nissan Altima, Honda Civic, and then the other 10 are trucks. F1.
One of which you had stolen.
Yeah, I know. That one hits close to home.
You're part of those statistics, Dave.
2005 Dodge Ram is number 2 on the list, which I had stolen. Man, it's almost been a little bit over a year now that I had that truck stolen. That is a weird feeling because I walked out, and I always drive different vehicles home from work if I'm test driving a customer's car or something like that. And I walked out to go riding my bike at 4 o'clock in the morning, and my truck wasn't there. Couldn't remember if I drove it home or not. So I walk in, I shook my wife's arm. I said, "Hey, did I drive my truck home last night?" And she goes, "Yeah, you did." I go, "I guess it's stolen."
It's a good thing your bike wasn't. I think your bike's worth more than that truck was.
My bike is worth more than that truck.
Well, and what do you think? I mean, do you think it's the sheer volume of cars? And I think it's because they're easy to steal. It's an easy target. But then there's a lot of them to choose from as well.
Well, I think some of them are hot just because of the parts that are in them. I saw that the F-350 was part of this list, F-350 diesel. I don't know if diesel engines are expensive or not. Maybe that's the part they're looking for.
And you used to see the Preludes and the Civics get stolen, and we'd recover them. Back when I had a towing company, we'd go recover the car, and the interior was stripped out. I call them kids or guys, gals, whatever. They steal the interior, then go use the bucket seats in their mini truck or whatever it was back in the 90s or late 80s, whatever they were doing. So all kinds of different reasons. I had a car stolen out in front of the shop. I left the keys in it. It was my car. They just took it on a joyride. Didn't part it out, nothing. Somebody just needed some wheels. I mean, not wheels for their car, wheels to get around.
It's good to know you leave your keys in your car. I'm going to have fun with that someday.
Not anymore. Not anymore. But, it was interesting the way they found that. The police officer in Mesa noticed late in or early in the morning, 2 in the morning, guy backing into Circle K. He's either doing one of 2 things, hiding the plate or he's going to rob the joint. That's how they caught the guy.
Really?
Good little heads up there on your.
I'm going to back in the next
detective.
time I decide to rob Circle K. Sounds easier. Well, looks like we've got Ted from Phoenix. Looks like Ted's got a battery question. Go ahead, Ted. You're on Bumper to Bumper Radio.
Hi. First of all, my 96 Ford Windstar, I'm glad it must be on page 13 of the most frequently stolen cars. I'm glad to hear that. But anyway, I really don't have a problem. I have a question it's a question that says, why is that? On the battery. I've had the car for 16 years. I've never seen any visible corrosion on the battery terminals.
So why is that?
Why is that?
Because you bought a good battery is what my guess is going to be.
Well, I've had different batteries, different brands, and I've had them in other cars, and I would get some corrosion. I'd have to take it off and clean them off with the normal procedure, but I've never done that with this car, so I don't know whether that's from superior grounding or what.
Well, I mean, one thing is just hopefully it's just the quality of the battery. Bob, we used to see the terminals leaking on some battery, even good batteries, but then, you can save a few bucks on a battery, but what happens?
Yeah, I've always would have to say that it's due to buying a good battery at that point, because the only reason you have corrosion is the seepage around the post, weeping up from the battery acid, and I don't know of any good grounds or any other thing that would stop that.
Well, I was just curious because I've had that same brand in other cars, and I would eventually get corrosion on it.
Well,
I've never had it on this car, and I had one battery last 7 years and 3 months.
Wow!
Here in the desert, and I was just curious. I thought maybe it was that there was some element of the electrical system in the car itself would have some effect on that.
And it could. I mean, if you had a car that had problems with overcharging or whatever, it could be the way you stored the car. There's a number of different things, but that can contribute to that. But keeping the battery clean is one thing. If it's stored, a lot of houses, well, not a lot, have air-conditioned or swamp-cooled garages. Depends on how you're driving the car. Maybe you have it up in Flagstaff during the summertime where it's kinder to the battery.
He was getting 7 years out of his battery. I think Ted
That's
is living.
amazing.
He's living right.
Unless he's using the Optimum. Now, I've had 7 years out of Optimum batteries, and they guarantee them against corrosion around the post.
Because it's gelled, right?
But if it's just a standard battery, that's quite unusual. I'd say he's got a good battery angel hanging around.
Doing something right. There's a lot of changes in the battery industry now. They're not going with the prorated warranties anymore. They're 32-month warranties or they're 50-month flat warranty, and after that, you're on your own.
Prorated warranties was an administrative nightmare. How do you warranty this battery that's guaranteed for 72 months? So thanks for the call, Ted. Let's go with Tony on a 1999 Dodge pickup. Go ahead. Go ahead, Tony.
How you guys doing today? Thank you for taking my call. I have a 1999 Dodge full-size quad cab that I recently purchased about 4 months ago, and I'm having two problems with it. When I run the AC and I accelerate, the AC cuts off completely for 4 or 5 seconds. Then when I let off the accelerator, it comes back on. So I was kind of wondering what causes that.
Okay, and then what's number two? We'll get them both.
And it also has oversized wheels on it. I have 20-inch wheels on it, and it's all over the road. So it takes a lot of effort to keep it straight in a line.
Okay. Bob, I mean, the air conditioning one's a piece of cake.
Yeah, that's normally a vacuum system. You got a vacuum reservoir that's leaking, or a vacuum leak somewhere along the system that's leaking. When you accelerate, you're losing that vacuum reservoir or reserve, and so it's a matter of running a test on it and finding out where you're losing it.
Yeah, and Tony, that's something that's probably pretty easy for a lot of people. If you're fairly handy under the hood or mechanically inclined, you're going to want to look. There's going to be a vacuum hose. The controls for that air conditioner are run by vacuum that's created by the engine. And like Bob said, there's a storage or reserve tank. When you step on the gas, you're losing all the engine vacuum, and there's no reserve there, probably because of a cracked line or something like that. And you could probably find that pretty easy. Even there's a vacuum routing diagram on the hood. But then on your wheel problem or the way the car handles, that might just be a characteristic. Now, if it was lifted, it might be a little bit different, but those wide tires will grab ruts in the freeway. So you've really got to make sure to get the car into a shop somewhere and get the front end shaken down. Check the ball joints, the tie rod ends, idler arm. Just make sure it's all straight and it has a good alignment on it.
For sure. Did you hear Ford had a recall on the 2013 Ford Escape?
Well, yeah, you got to give Ford some kudos for getting in front of this one right away. They're not very many of them have been sold, but they have a fire issue. So if you've bought a 2013 Ford Escape, you're probably already got a phone call, but they don't even want you driving it. They're going to deliver cars and on a tow truck, deliver a loaner and take yours away. Do not drive them.
Well, I think the gas line is rupturing and spraying all over the exhaust manifold, and they're bursting into flames. Well, it looks like we've got David in Mesa with a 2005 Chevrolet Silverado. Go ahead, David. You're on Bumper to Bumper Radio.
Hey, guys. Thanks for your time.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for listening. What can we do for you?
Well, since I bought my truck new, my AC has gone out 6 times. It's always at least number 4 and number 5, on the dial. And every time when I had my warranty, they would repair it, no questions asked. Now I still ride around with my number 5 not working. And last time I took it in, they told me I'd have to at least pay for a diagnostic for them to even look at it.
And you're referring to the fan speed?
Yes.
Yeah. So each time that's gone out, you're saying when you say the air conditioning's gone out, you're talking about the operation of the blower itself, right?
Correct. And actually, the first time it went out, when I brought it in, he says, "Well, lucky you brought it in because your vehicle could have caught in fire." And I'm thinking, okay, great. They showed me the little piece where the set of resistors get soldered on, and those were all burnt up. The first time it blew out my whole blower motor, everything.
Okay. Well, I mean it's unfortunate, but it sounds like they're fixing the symptom, not the problem. I mean, your website says it too, Bob. I mean, I was reading it yesterday. There's the part.
There's always 2 things wrong: what went wrong and what caused it.
Exactly.
You got to fix them both. But those were real famous for that problem. They've changed their resistor several times. They've redesigned the plug connector going onto the resistor. Actually done that a couple times. We're also finding a tremendous problem with the ground circuit on that. We need to make sure that the ground circuit going to that is good. I assume from what you were saying that they had also replaced the blower motor itself.
Yeah, I think, and what's happening there, if you have a high ground, you're going to cause a higher amp draw. That could burn up the resistor, could burn up the motor.
Takes both of them out.
Yeah, it could take both. So, and then we see on those the wiring harness of the pigtail going to the blower motor or going to the resistor goes bad. So it's not always plugging in just the one part, but what else goes along with it. So sounds to me like if you were going to the dealer, I would be done with that. And of course, a great place is bumpertobumperradio.com. In Phoenix, there are several very good shops. Not very good. They're all great shops, and that should be something that should not be that big of a deal to take care of.
Well, I thought I would point out, if you want, you can put a for steel sign in the window of that car. That is in the top 10 of the most stolen cars. You're all done with AC blower problems. Just put a for steel sign in the window.
That would certainly take care of that problem.
No, but he'll get it back. That'll be the problem.
Yeah.
On the 29th day, he'll get the phone call.
And the blower motor will be burnt out again.
Or still working, probably.
Anyway, thanks for the call, David. Let's go with Joseph in Phoenix on a 1982 Chevrolet Blazer. Go ahead, Joseph. You're on Bumper to Bumper Radio.
Hi, guys. Thanks for taking my call. I've got an 82 Blazer. It has a transmission leak. And the leak is coming from where the back drive shaft enters. I've taken the drive shaft off and replaced that back seal, but it only leaks when it's driving. When it's sitting, it does not leak at all.
This is another one of those what's wrong and what made it go wrong, right, Dave?
Well, this 1982. I want to say that's the first year of the 700 R4.
Actually, I have the TH350.
Oh, you got the 350 in it? I believe there is a seal within that tail housing that can cause that drive shaft itself to leak, actually through the yoke. And that may be what's going on. So if you replace the seal and it's still leaking, one of the ways to test it out is to park it on a hill. So park it with the nose up high, and then that'll force all the oil back to that seal, and you can actually see where it's leaking from without it having to get hot.
So does that one have a bushing in it, where the bushing wears out and tears up the seal also? Or?
There is a bushing back there in the back of the tail housing. That's the thing you can do is lift up and down on that yoke. And then sometimes you said the vehicle's getting hot. Sometimes if a transmission's running hot, you might see where the vent tube for the transmission is, and maybe it's leaking out the vent tube and dripping on the rear seal, making it look like the rear seal's wet. So.
Yeah, those are not always the easiest to find. It's not always as it appears. Like Bob says, there's what went wrong and what caused it to go wrong. I'm gonna probably beat that up a lot because I like that.
Well, the first thing we do with those rear seal intermittent leaks is go ahead and put the front of the vehicle up on a hoist and lift it up force all the oil to the back of the transmission and see what happens. So, good question. Let's go with Carl on a 2000 Dodge Stratus. Go ahead, Carl. You're on Bumper to Bumper Radio.
Thanks for taking my call. I've got an intermittent cooling problem. Sometimes, you can hear it gurgling over when you park the car and shut it off. And then once in a while, it'll just get super hot. The gauge will go clear up to the hot. Red light comes on, and you're down about a quart to 2 quarts of fluid, and we can't find out what's happening. It doesn't leak out on the ground.
Okay.
Or anything.
So no external leaks. I mean, we're fighting one in the shop right now, and Bob's over there with, I got it. So what do you think, Bob?
Yeah, ironically, we had one just last week along the same symptoms. And one of the problems that we had with that one was it turned out to be a head gasket problem. And it was just enough not to cause the engine to run poorly, but what it was doing is it was dumping hydrocarbons into the cooling system, and it would, over a short period of time, build an air pocket in it. And then all of a sudden you'd have a hot spot, boil it out, and then you'd lose your coolant, and then it goes into a bigger overheating problem.
So it was the air pocket that was the problem, from the combustion or the compression of the engine leaking air in and building. Okay.
Right. And the cure was a head gasket. Now, there's a simple test without having to get in. You can use a infrared machine that we use for emissions to test for that hydrocarbons to confirm it. And we found anything over 100 parts per million will generally indicate that you're having that type of problem. It doesn't have to be excessive where it's killing a cylinder.
Right.
But on that particular engine, those were really touchy about air pockets in them.
And you're using the sniffer. Have you? And do you use we used both. We used the block test fluid too. Do you still use that?
No, I've really learned to use the infrared machine. It just seems it picks it up so much finer. Using it, and I've had better luck with it.
Have you ever got a little bit of coolant in that machine sucked it in on accident?
That takes out a $1,000 board. We actually used the little bucket that goes on top of the radiator, and that gives us a space to where we can get it out of the way in a hurry if it comes through. But it's a very accurate way to find out if it's got a head gasket, and it's really simple to do.
Yeah, that's an easy test. And some of the other things, that you should be paying attention to when you're driving that will help them diagnose this, or whoever you're taking it to figure it out. What does the air conditioner do when the car starts to run hot? What are some of the other? Take a notepad with you and just kind of pay attention to what else is happening, and all that will be good information for the service advisor at the counter.
Thanks so much for the call, Carl. Let's go with Jeremy in Buckeye on a 2001 Mercury Mountaineer. Go ahead, Jeremy. You're on Bumper to Bumper Radio.
Yeah, I got a 2001 Mercury Mountaineer. It runs and drives fine all day long. Towards the end of the day, especially coming to a stop sign, it just sputters and dies like it's out of gas with no codes.
Now, what do you mean the end of the day? Are you using this vehicle all day long, or is it more in the hotter part of the day?
I drive the vehicle most of the day. It's my work vehicle, and it seems to be only in the afternoon. After it dies, it starts up and runs fine again for probably 5-10 miles, then it dies again. Nothing indicates on the temperature gauge that it's getting hot.
Any check engine lights at all?
None.
No check engine lights.
Well, and has anybody taken a shot at trying to figure this out? Have you had it to a technician to test drive, or have the problem duplicate? Or
no.
Okay.
It's when I want it to duplicate, it never happens.
Of course. Murphy's Law. Well, this is a case where, again, taking notes, having some information. What happens leading up to this? What were you doing with the car prior to the stalling problem, and what happens afterwards? And that's one of those things where you're probably just going to need to commit to a shop and just leave the car for a couple days. That's probably what I would ask you.
Well, the last one I had an intermittent issue like that. I said, go drive it up to Saguaro Lake, get it hot, bring it back. Just plan on making an appointment at the end of the day at that shop. So you can go drive it all day when it's going to do it, and then show up with it messing up. Let them know so they can check it right on the spot. Anyway, the fact or fiction for today is I should always follow the manufacturer's recommendation or the oil light on my dashboard for oil change intervals. Fact or fiction? What do you think, Bob?
One word answer.
One word? No.
No, it's a fiction.
Ellen?
I agree with him. No.
Matt?
Same thing. I agree. Those lights are marketing materials.
Marketing materials? I don't know. I mean, I think the manufacturer knows best. They built the car. They should know what it needs.
They do best know how to market it. They know that people don't like to go to the shop. They know that people want to have a maintenance-free car. We have busy lives. But not the case. I mean, you're going to, again, BMW, 17,000 miles on an oil change, 15,000-mile Mercedes. Doesn't make sense to me.
Doesn't
make sense.
It's causing a lot of issues on some of these cars. We're seeing them with hung up sludged oil, and they run out of oil before the oil change because the engine consumes a little bit of oil. So
oil changes, cheap insurance.
Well, up first this segment, let's go with Tony on a 2000 Super Duty. Go ahead, Tony. You are on Bumper to Bumper Radio.
Yeah, thanks for taking my call. My question is the door actuators. With the key fob, I tried to open the doors, and they all seem to go out at once. I also have an aftermarket tailgate lock that also works off that actuator. No problem with it, just the 4 doors.
And is this an intermittent problem you said, or just none of the 4 doors work only with the remote?
With the remote or the switch inside, none of the 4 doors work. You can see that they move a slight motion, and you can put your hand on it and feel like it's trying to unlock, but it will not unlock.
Did this all happen at the same time, or did you have the first one start acting up and then the second one acting up, and now all of a sudden all 4 are doing it, or is this simultaneous?
It slowly started with the passenger front door, and it did it a couple of times, and then you could push the button twice and it would always open. My truck somebody tried to steal my truck, put an alarm on it. And from that point on, I've been having problems. It was intermittent at first, and now it's completely out. None of them work.
Okay. I would still suspect that you have failing individual door lock actuators based on that description, with the one starting to do it and now the second one and so on. But that's going to take someone to look at a wiring diagram. That's where I like to start. Look at the road map, find out what's controlling that. Is there something that all 4 of those have in common? Do they share a common ground? Is it the alarm module that's activated? Maybe the alarm module's not working right. That's where the remote control part comes in. If it works fine from the doors but not from the remote, then maybe some issues in there. But it's...
I don't know. Did you notice he said his truck was almost stolen? He's number 6. Number 6 on the list.
You like that list, huh? So, yeah. Well, at least they didn't get it, but... yeah, I don't think anything trying to have it stolen has anything to do with it, except the common denominator there would be having the alarm system installed.
Right.
So maybe there's maybe an issue there. And
yeah, I would say need to get it into somebody and let them, like you say, take the road map and go through that, because those had a big issue with the ground circuits going through the doors. That wiring harness gets bent constantly. And the main harness that goes from the main switch goes through each of the doors. And if that happens to be broken, it's going to affect all 4 of them.
Right.
So I would say I'd head for a road map and trace it down. But as long as it'll do it, it should be relatively easy to find.
Yeah, not too terribly difficult, just a little time consuming.
Well, thanks for the call, Tony. Let's go with Chris in Mesa on a 2001 Chevrolet Silverado. Go ahead, Chris. You're on Bumper to Bumper Radio, and you're number 4 on the theft list.
Thanks for taking my call. I'm calling about my 2001 Silverado. It's got a 5.3 with 4L60 in it. It's about 115,000 miles. I just bought it about a month ago. I've noticed that in the last week or two, I get a real smooth, crisp shift from first to second gear. However, third to fourth gear tends to kind of lag for about 3-4 seconds before it actually seems to bite and get into gear. I'm also noticing that when I'm decelerating, coming up to a stoplight, I get this low humming noise. Seems to match the RPM on the engine. Seems to be coming from the transmission. I was wondering if you guys knew anything about that.
I think you're serving up a softball for Dave at first, but then that little low humming, I saw.
Low humming, I don't know.
Cringe.
Transmission, I don't know. We're going to get a low humming on it. On deceleration, maybe something's grounding out as far as a mount on decel. Maybe causing some sort of vibration. I don't know. You're looking at me like I'm crazy.
Well, you always use that term grounding out, and I always think back electrical.
Yeah,
grounding out,
right,
but
right.
in your terminology, it's a little different from mine. You're talking about a motor mount or a transmission mount collapsing and allowing maybe the transmission to rest on the subframe or something like that. That's what you mean by grounding.
That's what I
out.
mean by grounding out,
Okay.
correct. He said the 3/4 shift was the one that felt weird. What's weird about the 3/4 shift feeling weird is it's a band that it gives you fourth gear. It's also a band that gives you second gear. So I got no problem in second. He said 1-2 shift is great, but I have a problem on the 3/4 shift. So one of the things we would look at is that shift really lagging? The transmission only does what it's told to do. So the computer tells the solenoid to fire, and the solenoid goes off and it shifts into fourth gear. So are we just talking about a delayed upshift, perhaps, or is it really struggling for that band to apply and grab fourth gear? Not real common that we see a 3/4 go bad on a 4L60.
Well,
So-
but there's some other common problems on those with the valve bodies, or is that not that one? No?
Not really that one, no.
I don't know
So,
what I'm talking about.
I would say get in a transmission shop and let's see what the command for the fourth gear shift is and when it actually happens. So if we are starting to have an issue, there is a Corvette servo that some guys will upgrade to put a better apply pressure on the band, so that can be a possibility. Also on Chevrolets, we like to have a good clean mass airflow sensor because
Yeah.
that really affects the way that transmission works. So that's one of the first places I go when I got drivability issue on transmission on a Chevrolet.
Think we got time for one more, Dave?
Go for it.
We're going to go with Dave from Avondale in the 97 Caravan. Dave, you're up next.
Yeah, I'm having an intermittent issue. I'll be driving along just fine, and all of a sudden the van will drop to a really rough idle, and it doesn't matter how much gas I give it, it won't get any more power or speed or anything else, and it's not giving me any check engine light.
Bunch of looks here. Catalytic converter?
Well, it's intermittent though, and wouldn't the catalytic converter be fairly consistent? If that was the problem?
Yeah, you're right. It's going to be
Hey,
very...
Dave, you're not allowed to make us look bad on the radio.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's going to be... I missed the first part, but it's going to be... Yeah, catalytic converter is not going to be intermittent.
It's not the transmission going into a fail-safe mode, is it? Just putting it in second gear?
I don't know. It doesn't feel like it's downshifting. It just drops to a really rough idle, and it doesn't matter if I take my foot off the gas or give it gas. It just stays there. And then if I park the van and leave it sit for a while, it'll usually start working again after a couple hours. But it's not getting hot. I've checked the temperatures, and it seems fine. And the biggest issue I have is that there's no idiot light going on, so I can't tell what the problem is.
Okay, Dave, I just don't think we're going to have enough time to do you justice and really dig into this problem with you. But if you would send us an email, get us some information, go to the bumpertobumperradio.com, go to the contact page, send us an email, and we'll follow this one up for you a little bit more and see if we can come up with some help.